y'all. Welcome to Faith, Purpose, Profit Live, our time once a week where we connect faith with purpose with profit. And the goal really is for all of you, whether you're just starting your purpose focused business, or you've been in business for years. Every week I give you tools, tips, insight that will help you move your business forward. So as you come in, I always ask you to do two things. Number one, say hello. Tell me name and where you're joining from. Three things actually. Number two, get a pen because my goal is to give you insights you can move forward. And then number three, if I share anything that you find of value, then share it. There's a button here in Facebook. If you're here on Facebook, if you're watching the replay, even if you're on my YouTube channel and you're watching us, there are buttons everywhere for you to share. Now listen, I'm not saying share because I want to grow my followers or because I want a bunch of likes. That's not why. The reason I ask you to share is someone else will need this insight. Hey, Markeisha, welcome from Atlanta. Someone else will need this insight. You never know who in your tribe. Hey, Nikki in Florida. Hello, hello. You never know who that is in your tribe that has been praying for this insight. Many of you have been praying for it. But again, there might be someone in your tribe. I got a fly flying around in here. Someone in your tribe is a ladybug, which is good luck, so that's a good thing. Someone in your tribe may indeed need this insight as well. Hello, my Yolanda in Ohio. So you guys keep saying hello. I'm going to get started because I have so much I want to pour into you this week. So our conversation this week is don't believe the hype. How many of you guys remember that song from the 80s? Don't believe the hype. Yes, I'm corny. So, when I was, every week I sit and I pray and ask God, what should I share? And as I was thinking on it and praying about it, what kept coming in my mind is conversations that many of us, and when I say us, I'm talking about my NRJ Enterprises team, have with you as you're talking to us, whether it's in a Facebook message, whether it's in an inbox, whether you have the opportunity to talk to one of my team. There are certain questions that you ask us that means you are believing the hype. So let me tell you what I mean by hype. I'm talking about your ego. See, many of you get puffed up with who you already are. And because of that, it makes it really, really hard for you to go after a level above which you already are. You may say things like, well, I already know how to do that. I've already done this thing, or I've got these degrees, and I should know how to do that. But what happens is when you're feeling those things and thinking those things, you feeling yourself. Our foundational Bible verse, and I said it, you feeling yourself. So our foundational Bible verse for this week is Romans 12:3. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. Romans 12:3, which says, for I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself or herself more highly than he or she ought to, but to think soberly as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. And as we think about that, not to think of yourself too highly. So let me say this to you. Although you may have so many accomplishments under your belt, and I'm going to applaud you for every degree you have, every ladder ring you've climbed in your career. I want to commend you for all those things. But guess what? God still has yet more for you. And if you're going to get to that more, you got to not believe the hype. So when I think about that, it makes me think of David in the Bible. So I'm not going to tell you David's whole story. I'm going to give you bits and pieces. So David's story kind of starts around 1 Samuel chapter 16. So David is the youngest of 8. He is the youngest. He has 7 brothers. That's a whole lot of kids, right? So to make a long story short, I have it highlighted in my Bible, right? So when God told Samuel, listen, Saul's not ready to be king. There's somebody else that I'm going to appoint. Not Saul, but somebody else. This ladybug is loving me today. Right? And so with that, yeah, he was mourning for Saul. So Saul, right? So listen, God sent Samuel to Jesse. Jesse had 8 sons. David, the youngest son, was out working in the field. Now listen, if you guys think about what a shepherd does, think about it. Now listen, I had to read through this because I'm a city girl. I'm from California. I don't know anything about being out in anybody kind of field. Not even, listen, I live on 3 acres in my house. And I don't know anything about 2 of the 3 acres that we have because I am not a girl that's going to be out in acreage. That's just not who I be. I like to look at it out the window. So you won't find me ever rock climbing or any of that because that is not who I be. So I really had to sit in what does it mean to be a shepherd? So I want you to think about it like this. Now, how many times have you gone to the mall and you see the security guard that sits in the mall parking lot all day long. Have you guys ever seen that person that sits in the mall parking lot, just sits there hour upon hour upon hour upon hour? And I think to myself, how can he or she just sit there? How boring can that job be? Because they're staying and they're guarding. Or if you've never been to a mall and seen that, maybe you've gone to a gated community, the person that's sitting at the gate. You know, what's interesting is that those people pop up sometimes. Sometimes it takes them forever to get to the gate. You know why? Because they're probably either taking a nap because it's boring, right? But think about how long and tedious and boring that job must be. So that's kind of what I would liken to a city shepherd. But here's the difference between a shepherd in the traditional sense. A shepherd in the traditional sense is sitting in mud and grass, getting eaten up by mosquitoes and all kind of bugs, sitting out there watching guard so the wolves don't eat the sheep, that a lion doesn't come and get the sheep. So it's not an easy job. And David's the only one doing it. The rest of his brothers are in the house. So when Samuel, this great man of God, comes to Jesse's house because God sent him there and said it was one of Jesse's sons, looks at the first guy and not feeling him in the spirit. First son, second son, yeah, not him. And I believe he waits in between each one for God to say yes or no. I need you guys to get this. So he goes through all seven of his brothers, and then he says, but there is another one, isn't there? And I'm sure God dropped that in his spirit. And so Jesse had to send for David, who was out in the field tending the sheep, the baby. Sends for David. David must have been dirty, nasty looking, probably sweaty, probably a little funky too. And as soon as he comes in, Samuel says, it's him. And I want you to get this. That's when he was about, now, in between this and then David fights Goliath. And they say, you know, I've done a study on this whole David and Goliath thing. They say that when David fought Goliath, he was 12. So this must have been, he must have been about 10 when this happened. He's out in the fields. Now I'm guessing at ages because no, you know, the Bible doesn't always give us ages. But here's the thing that's deep. He doesn't become king until he's 30. He doesn't become king until he's 30. So Samuel says he's the one that will become king. He tells him that as a young boy, and then he gets sent back out in the field. Don't believe the hype. But what happens, many of you believe the hype. The hype might look like God puts a vision in you to start a business. So you believe, I'm starting it tomorrow. Don't believe the hype. It's not going to be that easy. Or you think, oh, I already know everything to do. Don't believe the hype. Or I have all the resources I need to do it. And it doesn't work. You know why? Because you will believe in the hype. So here's a really interesting quote. Can you learn to tend to the sheep with a king's anointing, but with a shepherd's responsibility? Heard this on a sermon last week. I'm going to say it one more time. Can you learn to tend to the sheep with a king's anointing, but with a shepherd's responsibility? See, when you are doing what you need to do where you are, even though you might have this whole king or queen anointing on you, maybe somebody prophetically told you you're going to have $1 million business. Maybe God told you himself. Maybe you started 2022 knowing this is a year to start your business. It doesn't mean your business isn't meant to start, but it's not going to happen overnight. So I'm going to give you a few tools you will need in order to go after what's next for you. Ultimately, you can't believe the hype. See, here's what the hype will tell you, that it will happen overnight. That is not real. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care how many years you've been in your career or your business, how many years you've worked in your expertise. It's not going to happen overnight. The second thing people will tell you is that, oh, you can make 20K in 20 days. Yeah, you probably can. Well, matter of fact, you could if you had a following already. But I'm not concerned. See, I'm not a hit it or quit it kind of girl. I'm not a one night stand kind of girl. So I'm teaching you for long-term sustainability. Because what happens after the first 20 and then 40 and then 60 days? See, the hype will tell you that you can do this overnight. The hype will tell you that you have everything you already need. And you might have what you need, but you need new tools. So before I start teaching, because I'm already going in, let me give you the 5 things you must do to get out of your own way. Because see, your hype is connected to your ego. Your ego is how you look at yourself. So it's not bad to love yourself, to be proud of yourself, to commend yourself, to knowing that you are the bomb.com, because I know I'm the bomb.com. And yet, number one, I still know there's more for me to do. So you got to be humble. It's about letting go of who you already are. You know, the thing I love about Jesus, Jesus is our example. If you read any story in the Bible about Jesus, he doesn't walk in the room and go, I am God's son. He never does that. He is hanging with the people, he's meeting people where they are. That's how he begins to appeal to them and get to know them. And that's why they then say, oh, there's something different about you. Well, he doesn't walk in and go, oh, there's something different about me. Jesus never did that. See, he let go of his title. He let go of who he already was. He knew that God was going to do something mighty through him, but he had to go through some things first. The same way David did. The Bible verse says all things work together for the good. So when you start your business thinking, I know everything, I have everything I need, I don't need a coach, I don't need to read, I don't need to learn anything, you're already setting yourself up for failure. You're already telling God that, listen, I have it all, God, I don't need you either. So number one, you got to let go of who you already are. You got to be humble. You got to realize that there's so much more yet for you to do. You know, I'm in a mastermind group myself, and as I joined that group, a woman said, well, Nicole, when I saw your name, I thought you were going to be a coach. I said, listen, I need to be coached just like everybody else. Because if I was done, I would, hello, no longer be here. You would have been at my funeral. The same way if you were done. As Demetri on my team always says, you can't see the label from inside the jar. So if I'm going to continue to grow, which is number two, you got to be committed to lifelong learning. Because so if I'm going to continue to grow myself, I've got to be in position to learn something new. You know, you can't put old new wine in old wineskins. Those of you that were with me a couple weeks ago when I did the FPP breakfast, I talked about this. You can't put new wine in old wineskins. Well, if God is going to continue to do abundantly above all I could ask or think, if it's bigger than I can ask or think, it means I haven't done it yet. It means I haven't seen it yet. So that means I've got to continue to grow to it. So when you think about someone that's a lifelong learner, I love me some Oprah. So, you know, unfortunately, she doesn't have her show anymore, so we don't get to hear about it like she used to share on her show all the time, all the things she was learning and doing and growing. But even when her network failed, so she could have been okay with having a TV show. But that would have been complacent of her because her TV show, she had that on lock. She knew how to do it. God had more for her, which was a cable network. She had to learn how to do it. She didn't just know because she was Oprah. No. Y'all remember how horrible her cable network was the first year? Might have been the first 2 years. It was horrible. Now it's my favorite network, by the way. Love me some OWN. But she had to commit to lifelong learning. She had to let go of who she already was to go after a level above which she hadn't yet become, which was a cable owner, a network owner. She was a owner of a TV show, a creator of a TV show, an executive producer, but she didn't own a network. And I wonder what would happen if you let go of your title, if you let go of your bio and your resume, all that's done, and you went after a whole different piece of your gift. Which moves me into number three. Number three, you have to be willing to wait. The thing that, again, I love the story of David, and again, it starts in 1 Samuel. Listen, 1 Samuel chapter 16, it goes on for a while because he goes through David and Goliath. He has this whole episode with Saul and Jonathan, Saul's son, and he goes through a lot before he becomes king. A lot. So I need you guys to truly, truly take some time and get this. That he had to be willing to wait. So the thing that I absolutely love is when I cook something and I let it marinate. It's the stuff that I cook. I think about, I make really good oxtail stew, baby. So good, right? Learned it from my mom. My oxtails, the ones that are really good, I put them on really, really low and let them cook really slow. Or even Thanksgiving. It's a turkey when you get up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. even. Put it on 200. Let it cook really slow. See, it's not going to be fast. And sometimes it happens overnight, but it's not, to me, your success doesn't happen overnight. I have yet to meet anybody's overnight success. What happens is there's so many things that happen that you don't see. So it looks like it was overnight to you because you didn't see all the things they went through before they got there. See, when David became king, people didn't realize he had been a shepherd in the dirt, fighting lions and keeping and wolves away from sheep. They didn't realize that he fought Goliath. Listen, even after he fought Goliath, he went back to shepherding. You would think after that he gets all these accolades and all these people are honoring him and excited and oh my God, he beat the giant. And he goes back to shepherding. So you have to be willing to wait. You have to know that you have a king anointing, but right now you're called to be a shepherd. Because many times God wants to see if you will be faithful over a few things before he makes you ruler over many. That's a Bible verse. I think that's Matthew. I forgot to look it up. God's going to make somebody knows the Bible verse, write it in here. God is going to allow you to give you a few things first and see if you're going to honor the few before he's going to give you many. Because if you can't honor the few, why would he give you many? Why would he multiply? If you cannot be faithful, if you're not a good steward over what you already have. So when waiting doesn't mean you do nothing. Waiting means you're being diligent and faithful where you are right now. So those of you that want to start a business, you got to be diligent and faithful for where you are right now. Many people want to start and go right into marketing, but wait a minute, are you clear on your purpose, your niche, your lane? And I see so many people jump over the first few steps and lose their way and have businesses that fail. And it's not because you're not smart. It's not because you're not doing what God called you to do. You want it quick when there's so many steps before you get to marketing, before you get to branding, before you get to even building a website. There's so many steps before you do that, even before you sell. And I think so many people out in these social media streets provide a disservice to many of you that are starting businesses because they lie to you. Don't believe the hype. It's not going to happen overnight. It's the marination that makes a difference. Number 3, you got to celebrate instead of compare. So what do I mean by that? I think a lot of times, thank you, Paula, Matthew 25:23 is what that Bible verse was. Let me look it up real quick. So listen, many people spend so much time comparing and not celebrating. Comparing and not celebrating. So what do I mean by that? So when you look at other people's businesses, what happens when you compare is you either feel like you're insufficient or I should be there by now, which is hype, when your journey is not their journey. Your journey is your own journey. How dare you tell God where you're supposed to be instead of being in a place where he can feed you and show you what you need to do next? Or how dare you tell God where you should be when you're not really clear on the place you're in right now? He's using it. So an example I always love to use when I talk about this is Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama got to a point in her legal career where she was done. She was frustrated. She hated it. She talked about this in Becoming. I use this as an example all the time. But that was not wasted. She was done. So many of you, where you are, your job just is no longer big enough for your gift. But if you're going to move forward the right way, you've got to get strategy. Doesn't matter if you're the CEO or the vice president or you sit in the corner office and you've been running things, great, good for you. But when God puts you in another elevation of your gift, it takes new. It takes new. And so when you compare, well, she left and she is making 6 figures already, but you don't know if she's been doing her business the whole time that before she quit. Or you might look at him and go, oh, well, he's on major stages. How come I'm not getting on those stages? You don't know what God is doing. Comparison is the thief of joy. Instead, celebrate them. I'm so excited for you. Listen, when you start celebrating other people, God then will celebrate you. So instead of you comparing yourself or where you should be, well, I should have been further than this by now. But you're not. And you know why you're not? Because you're not taking the time to grow and mature your gift. You're believing the hype. So by the way, let me read Matthew 25:23. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many. So while you're waiting is to be faithful with what you have. It's to continue to grow. So when I think about even my own self, the reason my business, many of you have heard my story, this year marks 28 years. It took me 17 years to grow. Can I tell you why? Because I was believing the hype. I'm not someone that just talks the talk. Oh, I walk the walk. I'm always truthful. See, I was saying things to myself like, I teach at a graduate level. I didn't teach at one prestigious university. I taught at 2, USC for almost 5 years. And then I moved to Boston. And listen, first of all, I didn't apply for the job at USC. Let me keep it all the way real. When I graduated with my master's degree from USC, my professor asked me to come speak to the class because my business had already started and I was doing what we were teaching in class. And when I taught in class that day, or really shared, she said, "You should teach." She said, "Give me your resume." I gave it to her. I was like, "I don't have a PhD, so the dean is not going to call me." The dean called me in a week and made an offer. So I started teaching. I taught there 4 or 5 years, met my husband, moved to Boston. So I called the dean and said, I'm moving. Well, no, I didn't even call her, actually. She saw I wasn't on the roster. She called me and said, "Why are you not teaching this semester?" I said, "Oh, I moved." She goes, "What? Where did you move?" I said, "Boston." Do you know she called Boston University? I got a phone call from Boston University saying, "I heard you're here and that we needed to hire you." They made an offer. So I was kind of feeling myself because what I taught at both schools is program development. That's my expertise. That's part of what I do with you all is program development and producing. So I do with my clients. So I was feeling myself. So because I was feeling myself, I'm keeping it real. I was feeling myself. I was believing my own hype. I had my own hype squad in my head called my ego. And because of that, I wouldn't seek help because I should know how to do this. I'm teaching at university level. I should know how to do this. But I kept failing year after year after year after year after year because I was feeling myself. I was smelling myself, as my grandmother would say back in the day. I was believing the hype. And for many of you, that's where you are. So, had I taken the time when stuff wasn't working and found help and stopped thinking that I should know and stopped looking at my resume, it took me 17 years to realize, listen, all this stuff you doing, Nicole, isn't working. And finally, I got help. And when I hired that coach, my business shifted. I felt like overnight because one thing I wasn't was clear. And as I spent the time marinating on my gift and getting clear on my purpose and getting clear on the lane that God created my purpose to dwell in, just like God created a lane for each of you to dwell in, that's when everything changed for me. So let me remind you, number one, you got to let go of who you already are. Ooh, that was me. Number two, you got to be committed to lifelong learning, right? Another quote here. If I had 25 years left to live, I'd spend 20 years of those in preparation because the worst thing to happen to a person is to succeed before they are ready. It's a quote by Charles Virgin. I'm going to say it one more time. If I had 25 years left to live, I'd spend 20 years of those in preparation because the worst thing that could happen to a person is to succeed before they are ready. And I see so many people that when preparation meets opportunity, they're not ready. Say it to my clients all the time. If Oprah called me tomorrow, I'm ready. But had Oprah called me 17 years ago, I would have blown that opportunity because I wasn't ready. Or however many years ago that was, 2010. I wasn't ready. Okay. So take time to prepare, take time to grow, let go of who you already are, and look at the areas that you're deficient in. Then you got to persist and continue to grow and nurture it and grow it. You guys know I've talked to you about that. Number four, you got to celebrate. Because what happens is when you start comparing yourself to other people, that will hold you up. As Yolanda says here, know your role and stay in your own lane, run your own race. But here's the thing, most people don't even know your own lane. You don't have a niche, which is already setting you up to fail. Because anything after you do after that, it just won't be successful. I don't care how smart you are. And then ultimately, the most important one is number five, trust God. One of my favorite Bible verses, let me look it up now, is Proverbs 5. I think it's Proverbs 5, 3. Oh, come on. So what happens when you're vogue looking at Bible verses, y'all? Proverbs 3. No. Yes, 3. 3. Ugh. Of course, my Bible app won't act crazy with me, y'all. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. See, when you're waiting, when you trust God, because maybe when you start to feel yourself, when you start to think more highly of yourself, when you start believing your hype, what happens is you're taking your eyes off God. God is, if he's going to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can ask or think, you've got to put your eyes on him. You got to put your heart on him. You've got to spend time listening to his direction. So the thing that I love about David's story is he was a man after God's own heart because he spent the time. He didn't get weary in well doing as he was a shepherd out in that field. He got anointed king on one day and went right back in the field, probably the next 10 minutes, went right on back to the dirty, nasty shepherd field. Could you do that? When I think about my own journey, I remember in 1993 when God showed me. Actually, can I be honest with y'all? At 7 years old, I got a glimpse of my purpose. I could see me speaking and coaching people all over the world, but I didn't understand what it meant at 7 years old. And then in 1993, when I was standing in that church, and maybe you guys have heard my story of that moment when I got to that crossroad when I was working in Hollywood, and I loved my job, but I felt like something was missing. And I had that epiphany moment in my church that one Friday night as I started working with young people. And that moment when I went home the next day, because I realized my purpose was calling me to another level, God began to show me the stuff that I'm doing now, way more than that. But here's what I realize now is that had God put me here then, oh baby, I wasn't ready. I needed to work in the field. I needed to work with teenage girls and understand what does purpose development look like. And it wasn't just girls in my church. I ended up working in 10 churches in 10 cities throughout the country. And then I started working with women, and I needed to understand from an adult perspective what purpose development looked like. And then in the last year, God has now said, okay, I need you to work with men. Now, had God said from the beginning, I need you to work with men, I wouldn't have been ready. I would have been fumbling balls. I would have been horrible. Even if God would have told me I was going to be a speaker. But many of you guys don't realize I'm actually shy. I had to get over there real quick. But what God does is He allows you to grow level by level by level. And if you don't take the time to be humble and let go of who you already are, think, I know everything. I don't need to learn anything new. You do. Because if you were done, again, we would already been at your funeral. If you won't be committed to lifelong learning, if you won't wait and be persistent and grow you as you wait. Because God showed me, but I kept saying, okay, God, what else do I kept saying, I'm ready, Lord. And then God would show me something else I need to work on. Okay, let me work on that. I've gotten really clear. When I feel like I'm stuck, I'm not stuck. God is trying to show me something to grow. So I do it. I grow it. I stay consistent. And then you got to be really careful not to start comparing yourself because then you'll think, well, it's too late for me, or it's taken too long, or I should have been there by now because you're looking at where everyone else is instead of understanding your journey is your own. So celebrate when you see other people doing well so that envy and jealousy doesn't sit and fester inside of you. And thank God for their journey and that you have your own. As you, number 5, trust God. So that's our conversation for today. Don't believe the hype. Some of you are believing your hype. Some of you are looking at yourself and you feeling yourself, as my grandmother would have said back in the day, baby, you feeling yourself. And then I would get in trouble for whatever I was feeling myself about. Some of you, your ego is in the way. And so I want to stop by and just encourage you that you're not done yet. There's so much more that God has available to you, but the question is, will you do the work it takes to go and get it? Those of you that are ready to do the work, I've shared this with you last week. I'll share with you again. Many of you in my tribe already know this. I created a program just for you called FPP Circle. It literally is everything you need to get clear on what your purpose is, who your ideal client is, the niche you are created to serve in, so that you can be really, really clear as we grow your purpose focused business. There are 6 levels to what you need to know before, well, 5 levels before you get to profit. Profit is the 6th level. Plus, so much more. I added everything you need in this program. FPPCircle.com. You can read all about it there on the page. It's 50% off until Monday, January 31st. So, look, your time is ticking. So, in it, you get a master lesson every month. You get group coaching calls with me. You get encouragement suite. And we add faith in it. That's why it's called Faith, Purpose, and Profit, because you need all 3 to work together. And so the program encompasses all 3. So again, go to fppcircle.com, read all about it. And if you know, like you know, now's your time. I look forward to serving you in FPP Circle. All right? So with that said, that's our conversation for today. Episode 2, Don't Believe the Hype. How many of you guys have been believing your hype? How many of you guys have been thinking that you are supposed to, you should have been, instead of getting new tools? One of my favorite quotes is the tools you've used on this level are not sufficient for your next. And for many of you, the reason your business hasn't grown or you haven't started is because simply you need new tools. That is exactly why I created FPP Circle. FPPCircle.com is where you're going to learn more about it. So listen, every week now, I'm here with you every Monday night, 7 p.m. EST. And then on Tuesday morning, we have a wrap up, like a recap, kind of an after show. So I don't talk about the same thing Tuesday morning, by the way. I'll go even deeper Tuesday morning, right? All right, Nikki said, thank you, Nicole. I did have to fight the should have been thoughts. Right. Because that happens all the time, y'all. And let me tell you, John 10:10 says this. The enemy comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So anytime you're believing your hype, you're allowing the enemy to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Every time you are in hype mode, the enemy uses that so that you cannot move into all that's possible for you. Because listen, when you become the answer you were born to be in this world, imagine how many people you're going to bless. Oh, the enemy's going to fight that every way he can. And that is why you can't believe the hype. That's why you got to let go of all the hype. That's why you've got to be committed to go after a level of you above which you already are. So it's my honor to be here. It's my honor to pour into you. So again, if you got any value out of today, do me a favor and click the share button and share it with your tribe and say, ooh, you need to get here next Monday, 7 p.m. EST. If you have questions while I'm live, you guys post them. I'll answer your questions live. And then tomorrow morning, we dig even deeper on Clubhouse. The thing I love about Clubhouse is I train you today, and then I answer questions tomorrow. You are so welcome, Paula. Tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. See if I have a banner for that. 8:30 a.m. I'm on Clubhouse, right? Well, that's not the right. Well, you can get to it that way. Nicole on Clubhouse.com. You can get there that way too. 8:30 a.m. I am on Clubhouse tomorrow morning. FPP Breakfast is what I call that. FPPBreakfast.com is what they did. Somebody typed that in the chat. So with that said, y'all, that's it for today's episode. I look forward to seeing you grow past who you already are. Because I'm not here for who that person is. I'm not here for your bio, your resume, all that's done, y'all. What area can you let go of your hype so you can become the highest and best version of who God created you to be this year? In what ways do you need to let go of who you already are? So with that said, y'all have a phenomenal rest of this day, and I'll see you next Monday. I'll see many of you tomorrow morning. All right? Have a good day, y'all. Bye.